Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of CA Overwatch. Now, this is going to be a little bit different than our normal stuff. Normally, it's more of like a podcast, long-form sort of content, but today there's just so much exciting news. I mean, that's why I got the Toronto Defiant jersey on. There's so much exciting news in the Toronto Defiant universe that I can't not come on quickly and make a video about it. So, for those of you who haven't heard, what I'm going to do is just simply go over the major transactions that have been leaked in the past 24 to 48 hours. So, all that being said, let's just jump right into it. For those of you who haven't heard, there's been a bunch of major leaks in regards to the amount of to the specific players that the Toronto Defiant might pick up in the offseason. Just to give a little bit of sort of background context to the situation, this all started. I'm going to play the video for you guys right now. There was a leaked conversation, a supposed leaked conversation. Now, whether or not this is real or staged is up for you guys to decide. Regardless, this is the video that was leaked and posted from, I believe it was Sideshow's stream, and it's him, Neptuno, and Custa talking. So I'm gonna play the video for you guys right now.
You don't even know if I would get.
They're not paying anyone over like 50 or 60k next year, apparently. And so that's why Brady and Kariv, I think, went to Toronto. I think they both traded. Toronto.
Who's going to
Brady and Kariv. Agilities and Kariv.
Makes sense. Yeah, I already knew that, but I don't want to say it. It's your team.
Yeah, no, and that's what I've heard. But yeah,
I'm getting.
Do you think Toronto's going to make moves to like buy like Surefour or Roll?
I heard they signed Surefour already.
Yes. Oh, I don't know.
That's what I heard as well.
Okay, so that's the major parts in regards to the Toronto Defiant. As you can see from the video that I just played for you guys, basically what they're saying is that Toronto Defiant have went out and signed Surefour from the LA Gladiators and then made either, I'm guessing either a trade or they just simply bought out the players from the Los Angeles Valiant in Kariv and Agilities. So, I mean, start off, the biggest of the three, in my opinion, the most important is us signing Surefour. Yes, don't get me wrong, I love Agilities and I absolutely love Kariv. But Surefour, in the video that we talked about previously, I think should have been our number one target in free agency. Not only is he Canadian and not only is he fantastic, but he also brings a massive brand behind him and a ton of recognition, which this team desperately needs. So the first thing is just simply that what a fantastic pickup by Toronto Defiant. I'm sure it wasn't cheap. But with all that being said, I think when you sign Surefour, you basically make the contract back in jersey sales alone, right? Like jersey sales and ticket prices, and the viewership numbers are going to go skyrocket because so many people are now going to pay attention to the Toronto Defiant. Obviously, the Canadians in terms of buying tickets for the homestands and buying jerseys, but Surefour has so many fans. He's arguably the most popular Western sort of player currently in the Overwatch League. So I'm super excited to finally have Surefour in the Toronto Defiant. Is he the best hit scan player in the entire Overwatch League? Maybe not, but he's definitely up there. Brings a ton of leadership, a ton of experience, and like I said, just a ton of fans and excitement come along with Surefour. So finally, this team has an identity, and it finally, I was already excited for the next year in 2020, but now I'm like, my excitement's to the roof. The next big news would be the Agilities and Kariv pickup. So why that's so important is because, one, it kind of signifies what I think most of us already knew, and that's that Neko's and Ivy's days are numbered, that this team is most likely going to go full Western speaking. I mean, if you sign Kariv, there's just no reason to have Neko on your roster. There's just no reason. As much as I enjoyed watching Neko play last year, and as much as I think Ivy has a ton of potential too, if you're bringing on Agilities, who's another flex support, or Agilities, who's another projectile DPS player, and then you also bring Kariv, who's a flex support player, basically the first thing is that, okay, Ivy and Neko are going to be let go, which is unfortunate. But again, this team clearly was going into a Western-speaking roster, and if you're going to get Western-speaking players and you want another projectile DPS and you want another flex support, I don't think there's anybody else out there better than Agilities and Kariv for this team. Obviously, because one, Agilities is Canadian, so now you have your top three DPS players is literally Surefour, Mangachu, and Agilities, which is the DPS lineup for Team Canada at the World Cup, which I think is fucking awesome. Like, obviously, they're not only are they talented, but they also bring, they also can rep Canada themselves. So that's awesome. Now, the one little drawback is the difference between Agilities and Mangachu. They obviously have a really similar player pool. They obviously have a really similar, in my opinion, skill level. I might put Agilities a little bit ahead of Mangachu. Obviously, he's been in the Overwatch League for the past 2 years. He has more experience in that regard. He's also only 19 years old, as opposed to Mangachu, who's 23. But he probably cost more in terms of how much it would cost to bring him on. So there's the sort of the pros and cons. I would have been completely happy with just running Surefour Mangachu. I think Mangachu is really good. But again, what if there's a meta that's, a Doomfist Far meta? Then Mangachu and Agilities is perfect for this roster. So I think the big three on the DPS of the Toronto Defiant moving forward is going to be Surefour and Agilities as the top two, and then Mangachu would come in there for certain maps and certain roles, and then to support if there's ever a double projectile DPS. We will see. Again, the World Cup's going to tell us a lot into like which sort of maps and situations does Team Canada use Agility for, and which sort of maps and situations does Team Canada use Mangachu for. I think that's going to give us a really good idea as to, okay, what are these guys going to be like playing for the Toronto Defiant next year? The odd man out seems to be Logix. Now, if I'm Toronto Defiant, I probably keep him on just in case you run into a double sniper meta. He has a fan base here. He obviously played well last year. By no means is he a scrub or anything, right? Like, I really enjoy having Logix on the team. He's got skill, and if you ever run into a McCree Widow meta, McCree Ash Widow, you're going to want to have Surefour and Logix as your DPS duo, because that is fantastic. As well as, I don't think his contract would be too expensive, considering you brought him in from contenders last year. So I'm sure you're not breaking the bank on him, which means I don't mind having him sitting in the backstop, sort of just waiting in case this meta ever pops up. So overall, if I'm the Toronto Defiant, that's how I sort of play it. Now again, is the difference in money between Agilities and Mangachu probably worth bringing Agilities on as well as Mangachu? Maybe not. I don't know the contract situation in front of me. I would have been perfectly okay with having Mangachu and Surefour as being the top two, but regardless, this is some massive news. And the Kariv's fantastic. So the other thing I wanted to bring up, and one of the reasons why I think maybe this move happened, is I don't really follow the LA Gladiant, but a lot of people on Reddit and a lot of people on the Twitter LA fanbase community seem to be like fanboying / fangirling over this like Kariv Agilities friendship that they had going on the past couple of years. So maybe that was another reason why Toronto sort of decided to bring both of them in, was sort of like, hey, let's keep that duo together, keep that chemistry together. And maybe that's one of the reasons why they pulled the trigger on the deal. So maybe it was like a package deal. I don't know. But if that was the case, I'm all for it. Hey, anything to build the brand of this team, anything that helps with the success, I'm all for. But that's not all. So not only does that get... Oh, the last part of this video, which I didn't play before I forget, was that apparently they actually trialed Neptuno to be the main support, but they didn't because they were afraid of his toxicity. So, very interesting. I don't know how toxic or not toxic Neptuno is. I don't have access to the comms. Obviously in season 1, he was one of the best main support players. So initially I'm a little bit disappointed because I would have loved to see Neptuno on Toronto. I think he's obviously, he can speak English. You could see from the video, English speaking main support player, which is one of the current positions that we need. And 2, he has experience in going to the grand finals in season 1. So he has that leadership capability. And in season 1, he was one of the best main support players. His Mercy is unreal. For those of you who have forgotten, Neptuno's Mercy was top tier in season 1. And yeah, Philadelphia had its ups and downs this year, still a playoff team. But don't sleep on Neptuno. So I'm hoping that there's a way for us to work around that and still bring him on, assuming it doesn't compromise the team. If the toxicity is that legit of an issue, then, then it's the right call. You have to make that decision. I'm not the one making that decision. But if there's a way to work around that, I would love to see Neptuno on this roster. I think he fits very well. And if not, there's maybe some other players we could bring on. Funny Astro springs to mind just in his current situation with the Atlanta Contenders team and their sort of depth at the main support position. So I'd love to see someone like that come on. And again, we have Fefe, so like by all means, like go to European Contenders and try to scout somebody else out. I'm all for that as well. But that's not all. That is not all. Today, the Gamer House also tweeted out a link from sources saying that Nevix has signed with the Toronto Defiant. So I probably should have actually mentioned this earlier, but I'm going to mention it now. None of this is officially confirmed by the Toronto Defiant. This is all not speculation because it says sources confirmed. This is all based on the leaked video, and then Connor from the Gamer House on Twitter tweeted out that this is like, he's confirmed it. He's like, my sources have confirmed that this is that one, the stuff in the video said is true, and two, that Nevix is also signed with the Toronto Defiant. The reason I put a lot of weight behind this is because Connors and the Gamer House in general are sort of up and coming in the Overwatch journalist scene, and it's really not a good look if you're out here breaking stories like Surefour is signing with the Toronto Defiant, Nevix is signing with the Toronto Defiant, Gomsu is going to Dallas Fuel. You can't make these large claims unless you're really certain they're accurate. Because if you make these sort of claims and they all turn out to be false, it like kills your journalistic cred. So because he's willing to put his reputation on the line as an up-and-coming journalist in the scene, I'm actually putting a fair amount of faith in him. And I think that there's legitimate... I think these claims are legit. Just because, like, from his standpoint, why put your, reputation on the line unless you have, like, a legitimate source confirming this to you? So, this is huge. In the video we made last week, I thought Nevix was probably the number 2 next to Surefour player that Toronto Defiant should go after. I love his upside. Yes, he spent most of last year on the bench, which normally would be concerning until you consider the fact that he spent last year on the bench behind Choyobin, who was probably the best off-tank in the entire Overwatch League. So for all we know, Nevix could literally be the second best off-tank in the Overwatch League. Now, I'm sure Fury and Mecha would have something to say about that, but regardless, he has a ton of upside. Choyobin has spoken very highly of him. They obviously just won the grand finals. So if you're going to pick up, somebody with that sort of, like we talk about leadership, we talk about experience, but nobody of Kariv, Agilities, and Surefour that Toronto's picked up has won the grand finals of the Overwatch League. Nevix has now been a part of that culture, which is going to be so important for the Toronto Defiant moving forward. Last year, we lacked team identity. Last year, we lacked leadership. You could tell in our inability to sort of adapt in situations. So having Nevix on that team, I really hope helps us with that. And I'm so fucking excited to see what he has to bring to the table and to see sort of what he looks like moving forward. So just a quick little recap. I'm going to try to switch over to my notepad here just to give you guys a quick little breakdown as to what the Toronto Defiant roster could sort of look like. Let me just do a quick little switch over here. Boom. So as you guys can see, let me just make this a little bit bigger. Right now, we currently don't have a main tank signed. Now, it's not the end of the world given, like I said, our head coach has a ton of experience in EU contenders, so I assume that we're going to scout one from there. Our off tank would then be Nevix, who, it doesn't matter who your main tank is. I'm super excited to have Nevix alongside them. DPS lineup of Surefour, Agilities, Mangachu. I'm going to put... I don't know why this is there. Okay. I'm going to put Logix in here for now. I think Logix might be traded or sold just to try and get some more money in to afford the players that you've recently signed. However, for now, I'm going to keep him in. Flex support, Kariv. Main support, we currently don't have anyone signed. Neptuno obviously was linked to the Toronto Defiant. I hope we can make that work. If not, Funny Astro would be a very interesting person to bring on. And if not, who knows? Maybe we go the Canadian route with Banny. Maybe. Not sure. Maybe we go to EU contenders and try to scout somebody from there. Maybe you get like a main tank, main support, duo from a really successful EU contenders team, somebody that FIFA has experience with and can work with. Maybe you scout a duo from the Overwatch World Cup, which is coming up next week. A ton of options for Toronto Defiant. The two-way player is obviously Roki, who I don't think will slot into this position, given that everybody's Western speaking, and I don't think his English is developed yet. I think that's one of the reasons why they kept him on. He's probably going to start for the Montreal Rebellion and work on his English until his communication skills are as such that they can be brought up and play with the rest of the roster. And then I think your other two team options are Ivy and Echo, both of which I assume will be sold or let go. I think there's too much money spent on Nevix, Surefour, Agilities, Kariv, to continue paying Ivy and Echo to just sit on the bench and practice. If you're going to bring in somebody else from contenders who you think you can work with and help mold. Both of these guys have a lot of skill. Both of these guys have a lot of potential. I think if you put them on the marketplace, somebody would buy them and you make money off of it. I think if you trade them, or I think even if you just let them go, somebody's going to pick them up. A lot of teams are talking about going Moneyball. I think Ivy fits Moneyball perfectly. Still a ton of untapped potential. Super unfortunate what happened to him last year because of his stage 1 performance and how good it was. So I'm excited about that. Another big takeaway of mine is if you're going to spend money on certain positions, your off-tank, your DPS lineup, and your flex support positions, I think, are the way to do it. And then if you're going to sort of scout and try to find diamonds in the rough, I think you go to your main tank, main support positions. Now, that might not be the most popular opinion, but if you look at the Toronto Defiant in stage 1, which was our only successful stage, by the way. The only time we looked really, really good. Probably our weakest players at that point were Yakpung and then the Roki Aid combination of our main support. Obviously, Neko, Envy, Ivy, and Stellar, I think were really good. And sort of the flex support at that point was, two tanks and 2 supports, but still. If you're going to spend money on these carry positions, I do think that off-tank, DPS, and flex support are the way to go. And then you can sort of try to money ball it for the final 2 positions. I don't expect us to ball out on a main tank or main support because Surefour and Nevix are not cheap. I guarantee you they are not cheap. And I don't know the price of Agilities and Kariv, but they're probably not cheap either. So we probably spend a lot of money on that core group of people, and I assume that we're near our sort of budget, so I don't think we're going to have any big names in the main tank or main support market. Again, I hope I'm wrong. But my best bet is that we go to EU contenders or the Overwatch World Cup and we sign a duo, so a main support, main tank from one of the EU contenders teams. So that's sort of it. If I had to give this a rating, if this is true, it's an A+. I think Toronto Defiant hit a fucking home run. I'm super excited. As disappointed as I was with how last year went, I think this is such a great start to the offseason. It's exactly what this team needs. I think they lost their identity. I think some of the fans were uninterested last year just because of the poor performance after stage 1. By going out there and getting these types of players, you've just injected a ton of excitement into Toronto Defiant's next season, which is exactly what this team needs. And not only do they have excitement, this is a legit competitive roster. Depending on who the main tank, main support players are, if your DPS lineup is Surefour Agilities, you got Kariv in the flex support position and Nevix as your off tank, assuming that you don't have absolute trash cans as your main tank, main support player, this is going to be a competitive roster. Do I think they're better than the San Francisco Shocks roster right now? No, I don't. Obviously, I don't know who the main tank players are, but there is a lot of chemistry and a lot of potential in this roster. And I can't wait to see how Mangachu, Agility, Surefour play the World Cup. And I cannot wait to see how this team plays in 2020. I've never been more excited for a Toronto Defiant game than I am now. If you're a Toronto Defiant fan or just a fan of the Overwatch League, you got to be through the roof with these pickups. I think it's all we could have asked for. Like I said, Funny Astro or Neptune on the main support position, and then main tank player, diamond in the rough. Fifi, Jake, go out there and do your thing. So I think that's all for today. I've basically covered everything I wanted to cover. Thank you all for listening. These are sort of my quick thoughts. We'll be back next week with the preview of the World Cup. As always, if you liked it, please, follow us on our social media. Give us a subscribe, give us a like. We really appreciate it, just so that you enjoy the content that we're putting out. And enjoy.